Welcome to Deco Guide, the only app designed to help you navigate your college and career journey in the quickest and most affordable way. This podcast is brought to you by EdTechity, dedicated to opening doors to higher education and career opportunities for all.
What's up, everyone? It's Professor G, and do I got a treat for you? This is Eric Guerra, right? Eric, if you don't know who Eric is a dedicated public servant. He is on the city council for Sacramento, right? He is mayor pro tem for Sacramento, which is a vice mayor. We'll talk about that a little bit later. You know, I still need to understand what all the fancy words are. But not only that, you're a product of Northern California. I believe you're originally from Esparto, which is a tiny ag town out here in Northern California, and you're homegrown here. You made it through the university system, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to talk about that today. So Eric, thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias for making the time to be here with us today.
Well, thank you, Professor G. Glad to be here. A little correction, though. My story actually doesn't start in Esparto.
Really? Tell me where it starts.
Yeah, it starts in this little Purépecha village in the mountains of Michoacán called Jeráguaro, Michoacán. And it's not that far from, it's in the Sierra Madres, but not that far from where all the monarch butterflies from Canada, the United States, all go down.
I've been there. The mountain ranges where the butterflies. Yes.
As a kid, I remember going up to the ranges for los azufres, the hot mountain pools. You know, my parents and my family were all agrarians. So, you know, the little pueblito when I was a kid, I remember the cobblestone streets, the burros pulling the carts with the corn and all the joshal there. Mm-hmm. I would get up, in the morning, and the mistamalo, the corn that my grandmother boiled the night before, I would go with her and walk with her to the mill to get that fresh masa for those, sabroso tortillas,
Right.
And so,
all handmade, all grown. Literally, the food is grown there.
Yes,
right? You have stoves of food, of wood stoves, right? Oh my God, it reminds me of my grandparents from Chihuahua. So,
from Chihuahua,
wow. Yeah, we're in Northern California, but I love where you're at. It's green. There's forest, the nature. It's ridiculous. I actually had a chance to go and tour the mountain ranges where the monarch butterflies land, and it was a life-changing event for my family and I, and where we said,
"Wow." Hope to have a Sacramento delegation to start going to let people understand and know how interconnected we are.
Yes.
I mean, to that point, my family, we came over when the economy in Mexico tanked, like when there were depressions and famine and the ability to survive. So
how old were you when you guys came over?
The first time was about 4.5, 5. And, my younger brother was there. My mother actually, my dad had a green card, but he had to hire a coyote to get us across the border. My mother had to run, and my brother and I were in the back of a van that moved us across. And
my family, very similar stories, man. My family's the same. Yeah, we came to work. We came to prosper. We came to really help this country, right? Get to that next level. Wow.
So we ended up in Esparto, home of the Spartans, as they say.
Why Esparto? Why there?
My dad had worked with some folks in Dixon and Esparto when he first was there. My grandfather knew a Spaniard, the Apodacas from Winters. And so, we worked on all the orchards, the tomatoes, and we knew because, we worked on pear orchards and also peaches in Mexico. So, so it was things that we understood.
Yeah, farm working family. Yes.
Look
at I got the Sun Mad Raisins poster behind me.
That's right. I saw that in there. So
I come from the same campesinos. I'm proud of it. Yeah,
exactly. Which to this conversation, I'll tell you, it's important because I reflected back when you talk about survival, right, and surviving things. That we will confront challenges always in our life, and sometimes they feel. Some challenge that we feel we cannot.
Hold on. What a coincidence. Nothing is a coincidence, brother. Nothing. What are the odds that I grabbed this cup when I poured my tea in the interview? And I had no idea you were from there.
Wow. Yes.
Okay, so it's
proud Michoacán over here. As they say, puro purépecha,
Yes. All right, keep going.
Well, yeah. So, to my point there, it's understanding struggle, understanding survival, right? It doesn't mean we wear it on our sleeve, but it helps us inform who we are as a person. And I didn't understand how to really go and pull that in until I was in that engineering program through good counseling and advice. And there were points in my life, particularly when I was a farm worker at the age of 16, that I wanted to give up, because I didn't see hope or opportunity, and didn't understand that stress. But being that understanding, how, hey, things are tough, but you can work through them. You can understand how to resolve that pain and how to move forward. Those were my experiences that I always bring back deep in me when I find myself in that situation. And at Sac State, the same thing. The long days, the insecurity, the lack of ambiguity, not knowing where you're going. If you can think about what it feels like when the lights are off at night, and in El Pueblo there was no lights, it's like it was a little,
when it got dark, it's dark.
It's dark, it's like, so
you might have one little focal for like the whole room. So
that's it. You hope it doesn't go out, but yeah, so that darkness, it's unsettling, right? Wow. So not knowing where you're going.
Yes.
And not knowing,
and then add delayed gratification, right? Delayed gratification. Like, you have to go into this knowing that, I'm not going to be successful and wealthy tomorrow or next month. Correct. Or a year from now. This is the long, this is the marathon.
It is
that we're running here. And then working, farm work. Me too. My dad, our choice of crop was grapes. Down in the Monterey County, Salinas area, right? Lechuga, lettuce, broccoli, and then grapes. And so my family, the same thing. I grew up helping my dad, driving out to the ranchos and doing work, on the weekends, doing work sometimes into the evening when it was harvest time. So I resonate with a lot of what you're saying. Then you don't see, it's beautiful being out there. Don't get me wrong. The first 45 minutes, and then you realize
it's the hottest of the day. You still got 2 hours to go. It's
and it's a marathon. And so, what you said is critically important.
Yeah.
Looking back, I used to do this, kind of very similar to what you think. You think of the people before you.
Yes.
Right. And that doesn't allow you to quit because they didn't quit. No. And their life was even harder than yours.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you go back 2 generations, then you add another layer of difficultness to survive, right? And then we like me, I was born here in California. And then I realized, wow, I'm pissing off my life, right? Doing stupid things instead of focusing on, really, more and more knowledge, right? Let me learn more things, right? And so sooner or later I got, I got straightened out and sure enough, I went to college, did grad school, kind of like what you did, right?
Yes.
But when you're in the field, when you're in there, a lot of our youth, you nailed it on the head. They don't see a future. Yeah. They lose hope. Right? They see the struggle and they're like, oh my God, that's another generation in struggle.
Hope is a very powerful tool. And the loss of it, on the flip side, is very destructive.
Yes.
And I think that's an important thing to help, young people understand how to seek and how to look to find hope and how to, understand that many times those opportunities are falling right in front of them and they don't recognize them and that people are there willing to help. Yes, there's a lot of people who say, do it on your, figure out, there are egoístas everywhere, right? There are people who are selfish, but there are a lot of people also that if you learn to ask, do your homework and learn to ask, how for help, people will reciprocate. And there's an interesting thing that I learned that someone told me when I was finishing up in between grad school and in my engineering degree. It was that mentors, they take ownership in your success. So they actually thrive on the fact that you succeed, and so they want to help you succeed.
So let's make this practical. Who were your mentors, right, at the different stages of your life, and how did you find them?
Yes. So sometimes, like I said, sometimes you don't find them, they find you. So it's important to,
That's true, yes.
as they say, ponte trucha, keep an eye out, like recognize when someone's trying to help. It is not a bad thing to say, yes, I need help, and to accept help. Okay. Right. That is, I think, and we learn to be humble and sometimes shy, and it's like, I want to help you. No, I can do it myself. No, it's fine to accept help. Right. And I think that's the first one. I'll say there was a counselor from the College Assistant Migrant Program, the CAMP program at Sac State, which right now has been cut from the federal government by the
it was one of the cuts for defunding the federal education programs.
Oh, yeah. And so that program itself, there was a college counselor that found out who I was. I happened to be skipping class because I was in that zone, just like, ¿qué estoy haciendo con mi vida?
It's starting to be too overwhelming. Yeah, all of this, right? And so you're tuning out. Yep.
Yeah. And so I remember skipping class, and there was a conference room with all the good kids, and the college counselors were all there with the good kids. And I crashed that classroom, just being payaso, just being a joker. And of course, they sent me a nice little visit to the vice principal's office after that. But that college counselor from Sac State asked, well, who was that guy? Who was that kid? And what did they have to offer? They didn't have to, but they found out that I was a seasonal farm worker and that I qualified. And based on my prior exams I had taken, I qualified for the minority engineering program and for the camp program. And so I could have said, no, thank you. But I said, well, let me give it a shot, right? I'd never driven by myself to Sacramento. Never. To get on the 5 and go over the 50 and the 50-99 interchange. Oh my God.
You're white knuckling the steering wheel.
Exactly. So I remember that experience, but that happened, right? Sometimes they find you. But then when I got there, it was learning. The camp program was good because it started to bring people in front of you. But as I got in my
people like professionals. So you start being exposed to professionals. Yes.
There was one cat that I remember, his name was Gustavo Reynoso. He came in to talk to us, and he was, walked in, looked like a down cholo with the shaved head, the goatee. And I was like, who is this vato, right?
And why is he at the university?
Yeah, exactly. But he was an engineer. He actually graduated from Sac State in engineering, was working at Caltrans, and he's an artist. And he talked about, I'm sure he probably doesn't remember this, but he talked about how you can be multiple things at the same time. You don't have to be who people told you are. You get to choose who you are. And opening that exposure was kind of eye-opening because he's an amazing artist. He's an amazing engineer. He started his own gallery for a while, and so you're learning the business aspect of it, and so problem solving. So that was the exposure of seeing other people, I think, is important. So what advice
that look like you?
Exactly.
Right.
Go ask for help. And that's where you learn. Go and ask advice. When I have a Sac State student who reaches out to me and says, hey, I'd like to have a cup of coffee, I immediately give them my personal email and my cell number and said, give me a call. I can always afford a cup of coffee for you. Someone to just start the conversation. Sometimes, we were like, maybe this conversation is going to lead to an exact pathway. No, but it expand your exposure. The other piece when I was at the campus, it was learning how to find resources. There's an important...
So resources, let's define that. Money, help, anything that's free.
Yes, anything that's free because you don't have it, right? And learning to find that. And the issue of critical thinking, it's not enough to memorize things. Sometimes we think we have to remember and memorize it. No, it's learning how to think through a problem, and that including finding the right people. And I will tell one that everyone always takes for granted. And I to this day, I still, when I have a problem, I know where to go. And it's an interesting group of people. Some might call it a cult. Some might call it, a unique subset of our society, but it's called librarians.
Yeah.
And librarians, like you figure out, and these librarians, when you walk into a library, most people just walk right past them. But they're always there waiting to see if someone going to ask me a question, someone going to ask me.
And they are research experts.
Their entire education is on finding things, They're your finders, right? And they help you what the librarians helped me do was learn how to create questions, not to find answers, create questions to narrow to find out where you were. And It was just so amazing when I asked, very shyly, this librarian a question, and it was like I made their day. All of a sudden, next thing you know, I came back with these 10 books. What are we doing? And this is where we start, you know. And now with the advancement of technology and social media and whatnot, they're trained in an entirely different way. So one, learning to find those experts, librarians, right? And one of the college counselors, advisors, so so it was that, I would say those are some key things. And the other piece, on at the campus, the issues of financial pressures are real.
Absolutely. That's the number one reason most students drop out is financial pressures.
But I also,
Now your parents didn't have a massive bank account of cash for you when, and they said, hey, here's your college fund, Eric. That didn't exist because I didn't get one of those either.
Oh, no. In fact, I think if I remember, my first internship as an engineering student, I made more than both my parents combined.
Wow.
I mean, minimum wage is $4 an hour.
The time you put in, right, immediately gets you those professional salaries. And if you're a listener and you're not sure of finishing those professional salaries, same with mine. I looked at my pay that first professional year, and it was like, wow, I made exactly what my parents made combined. And it's like, wow. Okay. And it's only going to get better from here because every year of experience, become, more valuable, right?
It does. And so I want to say I started it the hard way though. And then I learned from a few students of mine, a few classmates of mine that we were students together. When I started, I knew how to work hard, as they, le daba ganas. And so I was a janitor at night, so I would start at 10
So you had a job. Okay.
And I would work till 3:30 in the morning.
A week were you putting in while you were going to school?
All the time. I had a job, working, whatnot. Wow. Luckily, I started working on campus because before I was working off campus. So then I had to pay for a car and pay for gas and pay And so at one point, it felt like I was working to pay for the car and not for my education. So first, try to work on campus, whatever it is, even if it's a janitor. So, but then I started focusing on just the work to pay for my expenses. And what I found was I was exhausted also, but I was used to long hours of work. I always have been.
Right. Since you were working in the fields, I mean, that's getting back to your ancestors have paved the way of work ethic, right? Like you have it in your blood.
It is.
That you can work 24 hours straight when need to, right? And
we can, and when need to. And I think that's the important thing, when need to, but then also working smarter. One of the classmates I had, he had gone into academic probation. He was going to
grades were lower, right? Under 2.0. Yep.
Oh yeah, and he was going to get kicked out of school for it at a college, and then he happened to just find an application for a scholarship, and he wrote about his story. He was a teen dad, and he wrote about his experiences and his drive to move forward. And that one application that he spent probably an hour or two in writing and putting in, he got $1,000 scholarship.
Yeah.
So then he did the math. He said, well, if it takes me an hour or two, let's say 2 hours, and I get $1,000, that means I'm making $500 an hour. So then he said, well, then
I'm quitting the fast food job.
Yes, exactly. And so he said, so he spent a lot of his time searching and applying and searching and applying and spending that time so that he could have more time, because he was a father, and now he had to make sure he had time for his education and his child. And so at that point, and I never thought about that in that context, to really think through. And if it takes me 3 hours to go through and find an application and figure it out, then I put that in that terms. So I would say to students, like, think about scholarship and monetary, about your time, how you're spending your time.
And where you're and that includes applications to like support programs. The application is probably a 20-minute application, if that.
Yes.
But if you apply, that's going to get you like free textbooks next semester.
Exactly.
That right there, that 20 minutes is worth $600 to $700 in textbooks.
Exactly.
Right. You know, the technology loan programs. Now there's a lot. There's a lot because COVID's over, right? And all that technology, well, the colleges still own it. And so there's tech loan programs. If you can't afford a computer, get on their website, find the computer loan program on there and go and apply, right? The basic needs center. Now they have basic needs center. Need food? Walk in there. It's free, right? Yep. Need housing? Walk in there. They got counselors that'll connect you with the different resources there. So there's a lot out there that can help our audience become more resourceful, meaning spending a lot less money, meaning you don't have to work so much.
If you get an internship downtown Sacramento, you can apply to the city of Sacramento for a discounted RT pass. But even if you're a Sac State student, it's already paid in your fees. So, I
start using it, right? The public transportation.
I will say the biggest drawback is having a car. And there's a lot of ego in it. Sometimes there's pride, it's we do have a car culture in California, and even in the Latino community, right? Like I wanted to have a lowrider. But it was a distraction. And if you think about it, if you can take away that distraction for 4 years, maybe 5 years, then the first year on your first job, you can use that expendable income to what you want. That's how you want it. So
in 10 years, you'll have 5 of the best lowriders you could ever build.
Exactly, and they do. And I know some of my friends who are engineers and whatnot, and they've got 2 or 3 lowriders, right? And they're trading them and they're whatnot. Yeah, and it's not just basics. Like they got the juice, they got some with air shocks, with airbags on them, so they get a smooth ride, not the bumpy ride.
Yeah, no more primer. It's candy paint. It's beautiful.
Yeah, they're probably hiring Gustavo Reynoso to do the artwork there.
Yes, yeah. So again, delayed gratification, right, is not going after that big win right now. No, this is you're running a marathon, and you ran a marathon in engineering. Yes. Engineering is one of the longest majors you can study.
Yes.
But it's one of the most rigorous and one of the most beneficial in terms of income, critical thinking skills that you have, because it's all problem solving.
Exactly.
Right? And so how did you transition your education in engineering, critical thinking? You made that transition to public service, which is what you do now.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So tell us about that, and tell us how those critical thinking skills and problem solving skills are now helping you in your everyday work.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't want to simplify it this much, but when you learn how to solve a formula, right? You need to identify what are your constants, what are your variables, and in a function, sometimes you have the desired goal, right? The outcome, or parallel assumptions, right? If you have 2 things, so learning to identify your parameters. So if you're going through your education, your engineering training, your math training, you're going to start learning about models and in those models, understanding what are the variables and what are the assumed constants, then you can solve an equation. And so I started learning using that critical thinking methodology to asking questions, right? Well, what are the things that we don't know? First of all, versus trying to say what is it that we do know, and I understanding what you don't know helps you dig deeper into the problems you're solving. So I learned those critical thinking things. And later on, I ended up working for Senator Gil Cedillo, who wrote the driver's license bill for undocumented immigrants. And when I was there, I had the opportunity of being the architect and the drafter of the California Dream Act, because I saw a problem.
Wait. So this was while you were doing your university work, you end up working.
Yes. I had just graduated, and then and then I decided, and he said, you should, if you want to do this work, you should pursue a master's. So your bachelor's isn't the end.
Right.
But when I was in your bachelor's isn't the end. It's your starting point. It's again,
great. I love the way you say that.
It's just a starting point. You know, it's just the starting point. And
that's what got you to do your master's in public policy?
Exactly. Exactly. That's what because I remember when I was a student, there were genius other students who were also immigrants, but unfortunately, I was fortunate to get into the final application to get a green card, to be able to get into citizenship. There were many who were young enough that their parents, for fear or whatever reason, didn't file during that Immigration Reform Act of '86, and then they lived the same life, but they were geniuses. They were super smart, but they couldn't afford to apply for Cal Grants or any student aid. So I took that experience and understood those issues and understood, hey, they are California high school graduates. The law right now says California high school graduates can get the same in-state tuition, but still, that's a lot of money. So then I when I was with Senator Cedillo, and I started taking these public policy courses, I learned, okay, well, let's write a law. Let's make the components of a law.
Let's become the law writers.
Exactly.
To get
it's all logic.
Wow. Yes. So you were part of that team.
Yes. And it took a long time too. And that's where I realized, okay, things.
No, I remember it came up a few times. Yes, it came up and then it was kind of eliminated the first time or something like that. And then you guys kept on it until the right time where they allowed it to pass.
Yeah, and now it's like a no-brainer. You go to a financial aid workshop, and they're like, "Oh, you need the Dream Act form? Oh, here's the Dream Act form, right over there."
No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. But back then it was controversial. So also having the courage and also to talk about it, because the framing around being illegal or undocumented or even an immigrant, right? So I always felt so confident to talk about how brilliant and how embedded these students that grew up in our high schools who worked
and loyal and committed. It's like, wow, yes.
And that's what we want. That's who we need to be. So I learned those critical thinking skills during that time, and I also learned failure too. I remember I got a D in my differential equations Fourier series class.
Yeah, advanced math class.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It was a tough one. I think it's called DSP, digital signal processing, was if I remember. Dr. Warren Smith, an amazing engineer, did a lot of work on digital signal processing and for medical device technology. Gave me a D, and I wasn't paying attention. Right. I was distracted, and I fell behind, and one thing left to another. Is like, but you know what? He said, Eric, I know you can do this work. I'm going to give you this D, and I will see you next fall. And the next, and right after that, it's like, okay, yes. Sometimes you fall, and learning how to fail.
Yes.
Is just as
fail
important.
Gracefully.
Exactly. Learning how to fail, how to, take the time to feel that pain, but then move forward, right?
Yeah. And chalk it up as I learned. What did I learn? When you fail, we forget to ask ourselves, what did I learn? So that next time the opportunity presents itself, if I choose to take it on, right, it might have a different outcome.
Exactly. And those engineers, those that have been so lucrative, have tried and failed.
Yes.
Now, let's be honest, like some of them have come from backgrounds where their families create a safety net. One of the things that I think of as a parent now, I want to create safety nets so my son can take risks. Right. Absolutely. That's the difference, where if people tell you I did it on my own bootstraps, I tried and failed. Well, did you have a safety net? Because when you don't and you fall, and that's part of the fear here. But what I want students to know is that there is a safety net. You just have to ask for it. You have to look for it and start building it. Start building that network and that team and that folks around you.
And you'll apply that to not only your college life, you'll apply that to your professional life.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. Imagine right now, right, with all the federal government cuts and all that, a lot of these colleagues of ours have lost their employment.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And it's the network that then catches them and redirects them into an opportunity that may exist. Right. And so think of that as a young person out there listening to this, is these skills that Eric's talking about, you're going to have those forever. And the better you get at them, right, the safer your net is.
Oh, yes.
So thank you for sharing that, because it is critically important that that students reach out to people like us. right?
And your peers are your net too. By
yes.
the way, your peers. I think about Daniela, who was in my class, and she always helped me because I was like, sometimes I was so lost. I was like, I don't even, what are they?
You don't even know what you don't know.
Exactly. I was like, I don't even, she's like, well, let me break it down. You don't know that, and I think about Clara as well. And Jose, from Woodland, all those, they always, we helped each other. And then I remember when it came to physics, man, I was like on it, like I was on fire, and they were lost. And I said, well, let me break it down in this way, And so what happens is when you learn, and as a student, I will tell you, the best time to make friends, this is the advice that I got from Senator Cedillo, the best time to make friends is when you don't need them. Make friends, right? Get to know your classmates, get to know your colleagues. Because if you have that perseverance, you help each other, you will succeed. And when you succeed, you will have those colleagues in your career as well. And when you have challenges and you make relationships and you're having trouble in a class or something, those friends many times come to your aid before you even ask them. But you have to do that work to be able to build that relationship with your classmates. It would be a mistake if you went to class, did your homework, and left class and went to a job. That is probably one of the worst mistakes you can make as a student.
You want to spend time on campus. You want to spend time networking in student clubs. Were you part of any clubs or groups?
Yes, I got involved in student government, and partly because I was frustrated, that the student engineering students couldn't get money for their competition projects and senior projects. And that the student government at that time, Associated Students Incorporated, ASI, was funding barbecues and hot dogs, which was fine. That's part of college. But I said, hey, you aren't,
you're not giving us $1 for any of our labs or any of these other resources.
I got to pay for this stuff. And so I ran for student government. I got elected as the representative for the engineering school.
Of course you did.
And then I realized, hey, you know what? The most important positions here are the ones that control the money. So I appointed all my student friends that were engineers to the student financing committees. And so they started funding all the competition trips so that students could go compete, could go get those experiences. And it was a little frustrating for the other groups. They liked their barbecues.
No, but that's another dose of politics at a micro level, right? At the university level, which the student governments at your colleges, they run a lot of money.
They do.
Even the student government at Sacramento City College, they got a lot of cash that they distribute. So you want to be part of that decision making party.
Oh yes,
you got to run for office.
You got to run, and you got to be engaged. And after that, the engineering students, I was like, I got to go back to engineering. They were like, no, we want you to run for student body president. And so I was like, but I got to finish my schoolwork. But I ran anyways, and I got elected. And yes, when I was president, our budget was $9.3 million. And we ran a child care center. We had a radio station. We had assets. We had employees, which means, and we had, all of these issues. And so I learned from that experience significantly by taking that experience on. I was like, okay, I have a responsibility. The one issue I would remind those students is you're a student first, because there were,
don't get distracted.
I saw so many kids in student government, young students in student government that got distracted and fell in academic probation. And that can happen. That's fine. Passion is important, but, make sure
your degree is getting your degree is the most important. That has to stay number one.
Correct. Finding out, recognizing your priorities and how to manage your time, because your time is money. Like if you're getting paid by the hour, that time is money. If you have to go hire a lawyer, they call it billable hours. So what are your billable hours? What is your time? If your buddies say, hey, let's go out, for a drink or something at 5 o'clock or something, they're like, well, what does that hour mean to me? Right? That's right. Now, if you have nothing planned for that hour, then that hour maybe means less. So that's the time to go use. But if you're using your prime high value hours for things that aren't moving your education, then that's a challenge. And so those are things that I didn't learn until much later on, but it's part of that process. So I would say, think about your time management as time value.
Absolutely. And say again, you're going to carry these skills into your professional world. Right. We all do it. Right. It's the same thing, time and value. So thank you.
I've noticed when I hired employees, I could recognize exactly how they studied, because also how you learn to study is important. When you go to the classroom and the teacher's writing things on the chalkboard, you should be writing everything he says and listening and writing everything he puts on the board and writing everything he says. Yes, it's important to do all the reading that they give you, but what they're writing and saying is what they will test you on. Same thing goes in the real professional world. I notice which employees are writing what people are saying and taking copious notes, and which ones are not, and think that they can rely on information they've read versus what is happening in dialogue. And how they organize their notes and prepare for their exam is how employees later on organize their work and prepare for their work product.
You are absolutely right.
And if you hire someone, a contractor, to fix your fence, you want that fence fixed at the time that you paid for. Right. Same thing. If you want your homework is on time and early enough to check for error.
To the specifications of the instructions.
Exactly. When you're in the construction world, you're building a bridge, it's like on budget, on time, right? And if you're studying late and it's not on time and not the specifications, that's how you will end up doing. And then in the future, this may be a grade here. This may be the difference between an A, B, or C, or even like a D in my situation, but in the future, that's equivalent to compensation. If you finish your contract early, you get a bonus. If you finish it late, you get fined. If you mess up the specifications, you get sued. If you have a good work product, you get referred and you get more business and you get more money in that direction.
Exactly, because it all revolves around that money, right? Because money drives those contracts.
Exactly.
And time is money. And one of my buddies who's more of a civil engineer, he goes, man, I try to get everything done under budget, under time. Exactly. When you get it under budget, under time, you saved your organization a ton of money. That's how you're really standing out from the crowd. And it starts all the way back to when you're in school.
It
right?
does.
How much time do you put into being, not sloppy, right? Like, let's just be real. I was in high school, I was super sloppy. I had to kick that out the window in order to become a professional and actually get things done at a much nicer level. So thank you for saying that, because a lot of our kids, you're right, the practicing that you got to take notes.
You do. I don't trust your memory. It gets worse than you get.
but when you're writing it, even if it's just shorthand or whatever, it's sticking here more, right? So next time you even listen to it on your phone, because you recorded it, now it's the third, fourth time you're listening to it. That's now in long-term memory. And then not to take away from technology, but being able to listen and watch people's facials, the nonverbal gestures, right? Those are enormously powerful in the message they're trying to send, and you're getting a different message when you're seeing that. And so
the other thing too is things happen. Like, look, I mean, it's important to get in the practice of trying to do things early and on time, because things happen, if you can start to try to work on your homework, you might, if you do have a job, they may call you in, say, hey, we need you now. And you want to meet that time frame. That's going to mess up your schedule. If you're working on a job site, if you're working on a project, you might have, a natural disaster that'll happen, or one of your partners in that company, is off or fails or whatnot. Things do happen. So it helps you plan better. And, as I was told, we never wake up in the morning planning to fail. We never wake up in the morning saying, today I'm going to suck and I'm just going to ruin it all. Right. No, we wake up in the morning, thinking things are going to be hopefully optimistic, but we don't plan to fail, but we do fail to plan. And many times when we fail to plan, we don't make that gap for as we call it in engineering, redundancy sometimes. Now too much redundancy slows a project down, but redundancy sometimes helps us with security, right? With backups, like figuring out what you're going to do. So thinking all those things about making sure you plan appropriately, have as much time, you're going to enjoy your time even more so. And when you're less stressed, you do better. I think that's the other piece.
Yeah. And if you had to do it all over again, right, is engineering or any other major, what would you do?
Man, I loved engineering. Gosh,
and you did electrical and electronic, right?
Again,
I think your focus was electrical and electronic engineering.
Electrical and electronic engineering, okay. Yes. And I love the technology. And I think if I could do it over again, I probably would have still stuck with some level of electrical engineering, but I probably would have done physics. And I love the concept of physics. And
that's your go-to subject.
Yes, and physics and maybe theology, because physics is the understanding of how things work. And theology is kind of like the thinking of how we believe things are working in the development of our social construct, right?
The things physics can't explain because
those
consciousness.
Things, exactly. Yes. So those are two interesting areas where, and what I've loved to maybe worked at, like, Lawrence Livermore National Labs or Lawrence Berkeley National Labs, creating and thinking of new things. I probably would have, maybe have done something like that. However, also knowing that I enjoy being politically involved and engaged, I would have also known how to do that. Now, I didn't know that you could become an engineer at the same time join professional organizations like PEG, the Professional Engineers of California Government. They're a very political organization. Yes, their job is to make sure that engineers have contracts, but they also donate politically to campaigns or involved in social justice efforts.
And they do lobbying and they do
lobbying and that kind of stuff. Like, I would have learned differently how to get my political passion involved while I also have a career passion. Yeah. So I kind of probably would have done that in that sense. I don't regret any how I got here, but thinking how I know then, I probably would have done that.
Now, thinking back, the kid in the field, right? And to everything that has happened to you to date, could you have predicted that?
I couldn't have, and I think
I think there's no way.
There's no way. You can't predict the future, but you can control your actions today, and I think that's the understanding that what you do today, you cannot have a fruitful tree until you actually plant a seed.
That's right.
And then
the watering,
and then has to water every day. Every day. And then once that tree is watered and grows, then it's la cosecha. You got to harvest it. That's
and now you're discovering that it's producing fruits that you never thought or could have even imagined, because when you were thinking of the future,
correct.
You were a 16, 17, 18-year-old young man, 25-year-old young man, just living life, surviving. But it changes, and that's what we try to tell people, the listeners, is same with mine. Growing up in Salinas Valley, there's no way I could have told you that at this age, we'd be developing technology, that we've been trying to change the education system to produce more graduates, right? I would have said, you're crazy. I hate school.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
But
you're right on.
Eric, I hope to one day have a second recording with you to really capture some of the moments, right, when you were thinking about leaving and where you drew that energy from your past, from your present, to get through those obstacles. So I'm hoping you commit to at least one more video with us.
Let's do it again.
Really chat about that, because when people hear that someone else made it through and that someone else, wow, they had the same problems I'm having right now.
Yes.
But what was that different thing? You were focused. You said, you know what, schooling has to get done no matter what. Right. So you had your jobs, you were going to school. You had, I'm sure relationships that failed and you were going to school, jobs that failed and you were going to school. That one constant was, I need to make sure I stay in school.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah. Keeping that path forward. Yeah. Last thing I'll just say is, two big phrases, I'll say three. Obviously, sí se puede.
Yeah.
La lucha sigue, and y aquí estamos y no nos vamos.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you very much, Eric Guerra, Councilman, Sacramento, California.
Thanks, Professor G.
Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning into Techo Guide, the app focused on bringing you tools and content to help you make better decisions about school, life, and career. We hope this episode has inspired you to pursue and excel in your own educational and career journey. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and share.